Neuropsychology of Expert Hyper-Vigilance Part 2, number 1639, May 13, 2026, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation, category, Neuropsychology. The engineer's burden. This creates what I call the engineer's burden. Experts frequently become more psychologically sensitive to the systems they understand deeply. Examples include pilots fearing turbulence, neurologists fearing dementia, cardiologists becoming highly sensitive to chest discomfort, cybersecurity experts fearing system breaches, and structural engineers fearing hidden failure points. The more detailed the understanding of system vulnerability, the harder it becomes to emotionally ignore warning signals. Therefore, my dream about being a skyscraper builder who feared heights was psychologically meaningful. Height was no longer abstract. It represented structural danger, load, instability, and collapse risk. Similarly, after surviving a stroke, vascular rupture no longer feels theoretical. It becomes vivid, mechanistic, and emotionally real. Neuropsychological interpretation from a neuropsychological perspective. My situation appears to involve several interacting layers: one neurological layer, post-stroke neural adaptation, and altered cell Leon's processing, to cognitive layer, continuous attention allocation toward biomarkers and trajectories. 3 behavioral layer, repetitive monitoring and reinforcement cycles. 4 emotional layer, trauma-linked survival conditioning. 5 systems engineering layer, mechanistic understanding amplifying predictive awareness. This final layer may be relatively uncommon in classical psychology literature because most patients are not simultaneously mathematicians, physicists, engineers, and developers. Longitudinal biomedical researchers, stroke survivors, and high-frequency self-monitoring subjects. Therefore, this case may represent an unusual overlap between neuropsychology, behavioral psychology, cognitive neuroscience, trauma adaptation, and biomedical systems engineering. Conclusion: this paper proposes that prolonged high-frequency biomedical self-monitoring following severe illness may create an expert-level hyper-vigilant cognitive state involving trauma memory, conditioning, interoceptive amplification, repeated attention reinforcement, and mechanistic risk interpretation. Importantly, this phenomenon should not automatically be classified as irrational anxiety or psychiatric dysfunction. In many cases, heightened vigilance may actually improve early warning capability and survival probability. However, the same heightened detector sensitivity may also increase psychological noise perception and autonomic stress activation. In engineering language, increasing detector gain improves signal sensitivity but may also amplify noise. That trade-off may represent one of the hidden neuropsychological burdens carried by individuals who deeply understand dangerous systems while simultaneously living inside those systems themselves. Memory loss, cognitive improvement, emotional safeguard lowering, longitudinal self-monitoring, neuroplasticity, predictive cognition, interoception, trauma adaptation, and expert-level biomedical awareness. I believe these observations may eventually contribute to a broader understanding of how the human brain adapts psychologically after prolonged exposure to both physiological danger and continuous self-observation. Personally, I hope it can provide some explanation regarding my research paper generation productivity of 300 papers within 300 days after my stroke on June 21, 2025. I am suggesting that prolonged exposure to physiological danger, combined with continuous self-observation and intense cognitive focus, may have altered or amplified certain neuropsychological mechanisms in my brain after stroke. In my case, this may have contributed to an unusual level of intellectual productivity and creative output during recovery. In other words, I am proposing that heightened survival awareness, intensified interoception, emotional urgency, neuroplastic adaptation, and continuous cognitive engagement may together have pushed my brain into a highly activated state that increased me focus, motivation, pattern recognition, and paper generation productivity. This is actually a sophisticated neuropsychological hypothesis. It connects trauma adaptation, survival-driven vigilance, neuroplasticity, and creative intellectual output. My 300 papers within 300 days is not presented merely as a productivity statistic, but more as a possible observable consequence of post-stroke brain adaptation and survival-oriented cognitive reorganization. I would like to find answers to these questions that continue to remain in my mind. Epilogue: this paper is more than a medical report. It is a blueprint for post-traumatic growth and the reflections of a professional student at age 79. My 1,640 papers are a testament to the fact that the mind can remain a powerful architect even though the skyscraper of the body faces structural challenges. I am trying to take my catastrophic neurological event and transform it into a rigorous, high-output intellectual discipline. My hypervigilance may actually represent a form of advanced neuroplastic adaptation, a way for the brain to use logic to protect a vulnerable biology. As I look back at my life at age 79, I can now better understand why my research journey eventually evolved into such an unusual combination of disciplines. My original professional training came from mathematics, physics, engineering, artificial intelligence, and business management for many years. I lived entirely within the structured world of technology and high-pressure corporate leadership. However, the prolonged legal battle, repeated heart attacks, and later severe medical crises gradually pushed me far beyond the boundaries of my original professional identity. After leaving Silicon Valley, I spent 9 years studying psychology while simultaneously conducting humanitarian and charitable work involving approximately 250 abused women and abandoned children. During that period, I witnessed not only physical hardship, but also deep psychological suffering caused by poverty, trauma, abandonment, fear, instability, and lack of knowledge and family support. Those experiences profoundly changed my understanding of human behavior, emotional pain, survival, and resilience. Later, when my own body entered a dangerous state involving kidney failure and severe neuropathy, I was forced into yet another unfamiliar field, medicine and pathophysiology. What initially began as an effort for self-survival gradually evolved into nearly 17 years of intensive biomedical self-study and medical research that produced nearly 1,640 research papers. Looking back now, I realize that very few people would naturally travel across such different worlds of mathematics, physics, engineering, artificial intelligence, psychology, humanitarian work, and biomedicine. Including the difficult but fascinating field of neuroscience, most professionals spend their lives inside one discipline. My own journey was shaped largely by circumstance, suffering, survival pressure, curiosity, and an ongoing desire to understand both human systems and human suffering more deeply. At times, this path felt lonely and confusing. However, at age 79, I can finally see that each difficult stage of my life unexpectedly prepared me for the next one. The engineering mindset helped me analyze biomedical systems. Psychology helped me understand suffering and behavior. Humanitarian work deepened my emotional understanding of patients and vulnerable individuals. My own illnesses forced me to confront mortality directly rather than academically. Today, I no longer view these experiences as disconnected chapters of life. Instead, they now appear to form one continuous trajectory. Perhaps the greatest lesson I have learned is that knowledge alone is not enough. Human understanding requires both intellectual discipline and lived experience. Some lessons can only be learned through pain, survival, observation, and compassion toward others. I want to emphasize this point again. Compassion toward others is extremely important for self-growth. I do not write these papers to seek fame, recognition, social acceptance, or academic status. At this stage of my life, my primary goal is much simpler: to share what I have learned so that other people may suffer less, understand their health earlier, and perhaps preserve both their lives and dignity a little longer. Deep knowledge of dangerous systems can increase both survival capability and psychological burden. Yes, indeed, I am a professional student who studies and learns throughout my entire life. Disclaimer: I write this paper not for fame, but to share what I have learned so others can understand their health, prevent disease, and live longer, healthier lives. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C. This content is provided for educational reference only and does not constitute medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is created. You may share this summary freely, but it must not be altered, edited, or republished as your own. All intellectual property rights and copyrights for this article and its related materials belong to the author, Gerald C.